Welcome back to the Peak Performance Podcast. As always, I'm Shane Kelly. I'm joined today with Coach Maurice Atwood, wrestling coach at Eastern Guilford High School in North Carolina. In his tenure, he has 20 state championships, 12 of which are state dual championships, and 8 are individual tournament team championships. 10 times state wrestling coach of the year and NFHS national coach of the year. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. I'm excited to get to talk to you. So I was doing a bit of research, preparing for this podcast. There's a couple things that stuck out to me that I want to get into in a little bit.
All right.
But before we get started, what made you want to get into coaching? Why is this something you decided to do with your life and have stuck with for so long?
Well, my mother raised 7 kids by herself, and I'm next to the youngest. I was actually born in Sacramento, California, and
Oh,
lived there
not
till I
far.
was lived there till I was 7. But grew up in North Carolina from the time I was 9 years old till now. And my mom, we grew up extremely poor. I never had a father, and my junior year in high school, I met my the man who would come to be a surrogate father to me, who turned out to be my wrestling coach, and he was the reason why I ended up going to college to become a teacher, so that I could be for other troubled teens what he was for me.
That's beautiful. It's
That's real, bro. That's real.
it's someone helped you out and now you're returning the favor.
Right. That's exactly right.
How would you describe your coaching style when
Tough
you're
love.
interacting with your athletes?
Tough love. 1,000%. I never sugarcoat it. Uh, when I say it, I mean the truth. I tell them what they need to hear, even if they don't like what they're hearing. And but at the end of the day, they know I care about them. I look. Um, I'm checking the progression of my athletes, whether it's in the classroom, in the hallways, in the wrestling room, or in competition. It's a complete effort from me, and so that's my approach. Tough love. Kids today, at more than any other time in our history, they know whether you care about them or not real quick. They can detect whether you have their best interests in at heart and mind, and if you don't, they're not going to take you serious. But if you do, they will run through the wall for you and give you their all, which is what you have to be. You have to be real, and then be authentic in how you're um, coaching these kids.
Well, I think it's important to have the both elements of that with the tough love.
Hmm.
Yes, the love part is important. You got to care for them, but if you're not tough on them, guiding them the right place, you never know where they're going to end up.
No,
But if, on the other
absolutely.
hand, if you're just tough on them, they're going to dismiss you almost immediately.
Right,
So like, well, what is this guy doing for me? So
right.
I like that.
And the schools that I work for, I work at a lot of all the schools I've worked for pretty much are inner city schools,
Hmm.
and most of the athletes that I've had that have wrestled for me are not most, but a lot are at risk, poor, and needed something to give them a vision in life, at least long enough to get them through high school. I've probably got a fair number of kids that graduated high school simply because they were part of the wrestling program, and who otherwise probably would not have. That doesn't mean that I bet 1,000. I've got former wrestlers that are dead or in prison, and so I mean, it's there's always a downside to getting yourself involved in something like this, where you meet a lot of people and it come from the walks of life that I've encountered. But overall, to take a kid that has never wrestled before, which is what I get 99 times out of 100, and to see many of them placed in the state tournament, before they graduate, or and actually graduate high school. Some of whom go to college to wrestle. Some of whom just go to college. Some join the military. Most of whom end up doing something constructive in life. That's why you do what you do. That's why any coach should be doing, regardless of sport, what they're doing.
That is actually a perfect segue into the next question I had. When I was doing a bit of research on you, NFHS had something posted that most of your athletes have little to no wrestling experience.
Mhm.
So how do you take athletes that have no understanding of the sport, have never done the sport, and help them to become state champions?
Well, I've developed a system of basic fundamentals that we instill the first year that they're out, and we drill it all the time. And my advice to any coach out there is make a determination of what kind of style you want to teach your kids, and implement it, and just drill it every day. And that's what we do. I call it everyday drilling. And the first 35 to 45 minutes of practice for us is the same thing over and over and over and over and over. Wrestling is all about repetition and muscle movement, and where things become a second nature. And instinctively, after you do it long enough, you pick up on what it is you need to do. And so many guys that have never wrestled before, they don't know how to fall the right way, they don't know how to roll the right way, they don't know how to belly down, or why it's important to stay off your back. And especially in light of the MMA that's out there now, where people are doing their jujitsu or whatever, and they're laying happily on their back, just daring somebody to jump on them. That's just not like that in wrestling. But yeah, we drill it fundamentals every day. It's all my system. You'll hear the criticism on me is, his kids only know 5 or 6 moves, but okay, that might be true. I mean, it's not always true. That might be true, but it doesn't take but one good move from each position on the mat to be successful. And I had a heavyweight that was a state champion, and the only thing he could really do on an expert level was a stand up, man. He got away. He had great shot defense. He was okay on top, but he could get away on bottom, and he won a lot of 1-0, 2-1 matches en route to the state championship. Some kids take different styles, but fundamentally, double leg shots are the same for everybody. Stand ups and switches are the same for everybody. Simple spiral rides on top, that's the same for everybody. So, wrestling, I believe, is a sport of osmosis, where kids are going to start watching films and seeing other kids do things. And once they've got the fundamentals down, they can venture off into other areas of technique that we might not, demonstrate every day. But once they've learned how to wrestle and fall the right way and roll the right way and all that, they can incorporate other things. And what coaches can't do is get so rigid in what they believe, and that certain things aren't for some kids. Where let kids experiment on their own. But if it works, great. But if it doesn't, counsel them in another way.
Kind of giving them that creativity. The fundamentals are number one, no matter what sport you're in.
Right.
You're never going to be a good basketball player if you can't dribble.
Well, that's what I tell my guys that come out to wrestle. You're like a kid that's never dribbled a basketball that goes out for the basketball team. You're not even going to make the team. So you're out here, you don't know the first thing about wrestling. You know how to horseplay, and that's certainly not the same thing. And what you need to do is just learn what we're doing and get acclimated to that, and then get into competition and realize that initially, at least, you're going to lose your matches because you don't know what you're doing. And once you gain some experience and some success breeds confidence, and it just goes from there.
How would you describe the culture around your team? I know culture is a popular buzzword around sports, and everyone kind of has their own definition. I know
Mhm.
personally, when I think about team culture, it's what is the atmosphere of the team day in, day out? What are the interactions like? How would you describe that regarding your specific wrestling team?
We embrace the grind. Kids know that practice is going to be tough. Our easiest practice, I tell my guys that we try to, a lot of football players don't wrestle. And the reason for that is because wrestling is a lot tougher than football. And that's just all there is to it. And we tell the kids that come out from football that wrestle, hey, look, man, the difference between practice in wrestling and practice in football, and there's a lot of standing around in football. There is no standing around in wrestling. And you're going to always be doing something. You're going to sweat a lot and you're going to move a lot. So you have to embrace the grind, man, and get in here and work because it's the only way you're going to get better. But if, kid comes into my wrestling practice and he's not working, they're out. I'm not putting up with it because as a coaching, as a coach, you can't let kids compete that have not adequately prepared themselves for competition. And if kids not coming in and giving an honest effort in practice, they're certainly not going to do that in competition after minute number 1, minute number 2. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
there's no hiding in wrestling. And when every tick on that clock matters, every second that ticks off of that clock matters. I mean, that's sweat, that's perseverance and commitment. I mean, all that matters. I mean, every second matters in football. Most seconds don't matter at all. I mean, you've wrestled more in true competition than a football game has from whistle to whistle throughout a 1-hour game. And so if you're not preparing these kids and making them embrace the grind like we do, then you're not preparing them for competition.
Would you say that you're going back to coaching style a little bit? Would you say you've modeled your own coaching style after the wrestling coach you had as a
No,
kid?
no, I kind of modeled it a little bit from the 3 different coaches. I had a high school coach and 2 college coaches. And probably the college coach that I learned the most from was my junior college coach, who was probably as brutally honest and real with me as anybody ever has been in my life. And so he gave me the knowledge for what I use that I implement every day now. I mean, you have to have an expectation. The expectation, first of all, for me is you better be in school. If one of my wrestlers is not in school, I'm calling to find out why. You get your butt to class on time. You sit down in class, act like you got some sense, and do your schoolwork. Because if that teacher tells me that they're having a problem with you, they're going to be held to pay for that. Then you get to practice on time, and while you're at practice, you give it 1,000%. And if you're falling short somehow, some way, you're not going to last very long on my team, And I hate to encourage kids to come out to wrestle just to boot them, but you have to have an expectation. And I learned that from Coach Herman Norman when I wrestled for him at Wilkes Community College. He'd have 40 kids come in, and after 2 months, half of them would be gone because they didn't want to come to practice or whatever. You can't have a team comprised of kids that might show up. That's why if a parent comes to me and tells me, hey, my son didn't clean up his room, so I'm going to pull him out of wrestling for a week. And I said, well, no, you're not going to pull him out for a week. You're going to pull him out permanently because you need to find another way to be creative in how you punish your son for not cleaning up his room. He needs to be at practice. So that's where I got it from, Coach Herman Norman.
It's an interesting, punishment from the parent. Is that a real story that
Oh
happened?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I've had parents come to me trying to use wrestling. Well, wrestling's the only thing I can use. Well, you need to figure out another way. I've had it, and I'm not the only one. There's other coaches that I know that have had kids pulled out for reasons that had nothing to do with the wrestling program, but the wrestling program suffers for it. I don't allow that. Now, look, if a kid has a funeral they have to go to, that's a little different,
Yeah.
but not cleaning their room or doing something around house or being disrespectful to the parent. Hey, man, you need to figure out another way because if you impact the wrestling team, that I can't let you do that.
Yeah. And it's I get sports are fun, but punishing their kid by taking away something that teaches them discipline, hard work,
Mm-hmm.
timeliness, respect, and that allows them to get a good workout in
Right. Yeah.
seems like the worst thing to take away.
Well, but unfortunately, there are parents that do that and coaches that acquiesce to the parent. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I know
Good for you.
if they're going to be on my team, they're going to be at practice just like everybody else. Hey, look, I get kids that get injured. I make them come to practice. They can't practice, but they're going to sit there and be at practice just like everybody else. So they're still a part of the team. And some parents don't like that because it inconveniences them. They have to come and pick their kid up when they're otherwise not participating. Well, if they were playing football, they'd still be out there on the sideline. So they're going to be in here. If they quit, that's just the way it is.
And that's honestly a great method I've heard from a lot of other coaches to build camaraderie and build community within the team.
Mm-hmm.
That it doesn't matter if you're injured, cool, you're not going to participate, but you're going to be at practice and you might help out. Maybe you grab some waters. Maybe there's always something for you to be doing that helps out the team as a whole. And I think it really does kind of grow the team together, show that I'm not here for me, I'm here for all of us.
That's right. Well, but they chose to be a part of the program.
Mhm.
And so just because they're injured and can't participate doesn't mean they're not a part of the program. They need to be at practice.
Besides hard work, which we've already talked about a little bit, do you have any other team values that you explicitly share with your athletes year in, year out?
Well, the expectation, now I run my program 10 months out of the year. We'll start the second week of school with our preseason conditioning program, and we'll go all the way through the end of June. We have a
Wow.
week of dead period that we go through. I mean, obviously, we have the season November, December, January, February. But then in March, April, May, and June, we're working out 3 days a week, and we're hitting some off-season tournaments every weekend. And other than that one period that's a dead period, there's like a week in June, the last week of the school or whatever it is. I can't remember right now, but no, but we hit it hard. I keep these guys busy, and parents like it. Kids like it. Sometimes they might want a weekend off here or there, and I might give them a weekend off here or there if they're really legitimately giving us an effort. But but not during the season. I'm talking about the preseason or the off season.
Yeah.
And but we have that expectation that if you're going to be here, if you're not playing another sport, you're going to be with us during the preseason. You're going to be with us in the off season and putting the time in to get better to help this team continue to compete for a state championship. Not just the team, but you individually.
Another thing that came up when I was doing a bit of research preparing for this podcast was a note that a lot of your former athletes are now coaches themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to ask, how does it feel knowing that the impact you made has now pushed them to want to do the same thing for the next generation of athletes?
Well, I mean, obviously that you're proud about it, and I but I love those guys. But if we're competing, I'm trying to beat them. You understand? Um, but no, I mean it's friendly competition. But no, they at one point I had two former wrestlers that were college head coaches.
That's awesome.
Yeah, them, and one of them still is. The other's gotten out of coaching, but there was at one point in time, I had 15 former wrestlers that were coaching in one capacity or another, and so
Wow.
that was kind of neat. It didn't last long, but maybe 2 seasons because they got into coaching. Some of them just didn't like it and got out, and others, life found a different path for them to travel job wise or whatever. But there's still several that are out there that are actively involved and doing well. And so I think some of the kids that I'm coaching now will eventually get into coaching. That it's a great thing to see. But I tell them what I tell everybody else. If you're going to be a high school coach, you have to take ownership of where you are and put the time in that you're going to expect your kids to put in. Because if you're not, they're going to look at you like you're a hypocrite, and they're not going to do it. And your team's going to suffer because of it.
Yeah, you have to be authentic to who you are.
Right,
Like you
absolutely.
mentioned earlier, that they could see through if you're trying to be somebody you're not. Like I've seen in my own experience, coaches that are more relaxed people, but then it's their first year of coaching and they try to be like this tough guy, really hard on their athletes, and it just feels fake. It's like they're trying to mimic a style that isn't their own. So I think it is important for coaches to kind of go through that, like kind of that growing phase and learn and develop as their own individual coaches, become
Right.
who you are.
Yeah, there's a trial and error for coaches to find out what works and what doesn't work. The one thing about wrestling coaches that I've learned, very few are willing to ask, "Hey, man, how does what do you think about this or what do you think about that?" So they all, they're it's kind of like the old dilemma where women make fun of men that won't ask for directions when they're lost, and which is kind of true. But GPS took that away. But a lot of wrestling coaches, they want to do it their own way, and I respect that. But if you have somebody willing to help you, who has some experience like I do, because like anytime somebody asks me my opinion on something, I'll tell them. I'm not afraid, and even if it might hurt their feelings, but which might be why they don't ask me that much. but but um, but yeah, that's one thing about wrestling coaches, because wrestling coaches don't do coaching clinics like football coaches do. I coached football 1 year, and I went to 2 different football clinics with the football coach, and it was amazing how many coaches were there just helping each other learn X's and O's of coaching and this, that, and the other on what I was like, wow, man, wrestling coaches don't do anything like this. And I don't know if basketball coaches do it or baseball coaches, but football coaches do it left and right. And they're sharing with each other, how to get better and make their teams better. But wrestling coaches don't do anything like that. Not that I'm aware of. And I think that's a breakdown in our sport somewhere that needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
At
I
least in North
mean,
Carolina. Maybe they do that in California. I don't know.
I wouldn't know. They actually wrestling used to be really big in the Fresno area. When Fresno State had a team, I think they won a few national championships at the D1 level. There's still a couple high schools in the area that are some of the top ranked ones in
When
the
I was in
country.
college, there was a heavyweight at Fresno State. I think his name was Lorenzo Neal, maybe.
Name
Anyway,
sounds
he was pretty
familiar.
tough. He was a heavyweight. It was all American for him. I think it was
I've
Fresno State.
I've heard big things. The pro when we had a wrestling program, it was elite level, but that was long before my time.
Yeah. And Lassiter, the community college out there in California, man, they were dominant in the California League, and then even when they went to the actual junior college league. But I think they dropped their team now.
I don't know what's going on with California and wrestling, but the high schools around here are still doing it well. I was actually just talking to um, somebody at my work, and I want to say it's Clovis North High School in my area, and they're like top 20 in the country
Yeah,
in
yeah.
wrestling.
I've heard that name. Hmm.
And
There was the Palo Alto High School several years back was looking for a coach, and I actually sent my resume to the guy who was um, conducting the search. I think it was their former coach. I can't remember, but I said, "Man, what's the teaching position and the starting salary?" And he said 125,000. I was like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And of course, I started looking at apartments and stuff. So apartments were like $2,000 a month and all that. But I just, I was established here, and but it intrigued me when he said $125,000 a year, man. Man, that might be a good retirement gig someday. But so anyway,
going back to the whole trial and error
yeah.
process of coaching, how
Mhm.
long did that take for you to really establish, like, this is what I do, this is how I coach? Something that came natural, or maybe 5, 10 years in?
Um, well, I knew that when I got into coaching, I wrestled in college with a guy named Jeff Bedard, who's the head coach at Reinhardt University in Georgia now. And he was the best wrestler I ever knew. And we used to talk about being high school coaches when we were teammates, and And he told me that his high school coach in Georgia was this great coach, and gave me some ideas of some things that they did as a high school program. And it kind of that kind of stuck with me, along with what I saw my high school coach do, and then my first college wrestling coach, Herman Norman, like I told you about. So what the system I developed is kind of a smorgasbord of those three philosophies that I put together, and just said, this is what I want to do. I want to emphasize double legs, high crotches, single legs, stand ups, and the entire switch series, switches, re-switches, step across, blocks, and all that. And then, fundamental returns to the mat, and, that kind of stuff. And honestly, once I got it implemented when I first became a coach, I mean, I almost saw the results right away, because kids that didn't know how to wrestle were bellying down, or they were trying to stand up, or they were trying to take shots. And they may not have succeeded, and they might have been doing it incorrectly initially, but eventually, after repetition, they got it right. And of course, all that was supplemented by the off-season commitment. And when I really got into coaching, I was an assistant coach for 4 years. And that program went from being almost nothing to having a winning season. My first year as assistant coach there, we were 5-13, and then the next year we were 14-13. I mean, that's
That's a big jump.
But I was assistant coach, but as head coach, that first 4 years kind of gave me a training ground, because I worked with a coach that pretty much let me do whatever I wanted. And so that was kind of my training ground. And then when I went to another school and became head coach, I mean, we almost took off immediately, because we implemented it in, and some of those kids knew a little bit about wrestling, and it just took off.
So did you kind of use that 4 years as an assistant coach as your trial and error period, learning a little bit here and there, and then once you got the head coaching gig, you just ran with it?
Yeah, but I could have been, during that time, I was mature enough and knowledgeable enough to be a head coach, but that was my old high school, and I wanted to go back there and coach for a little while. And the guy that was coach there, he was a good coach in his own right, and had been there for a long time, and ended up staying there his entire career before he retired a few years ago. And so being the head coach there just wasn't in the works. But yeah, it showed me some things that to do, and what not to do, and what worked and what didn't work. And so yes, it was kind of a trial and error, but really it was just more trial, because there wasn't really a lot of error, because a lot of the same stuff that we did there, I still do today. I mean, there are some things that we used to do there that we don't do as much of, but we still do it. You see what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
the part of that is, when I was coaching there, we'd get out of school at 2:15, and you could still leave practice after 2 hours and be daylight. Well, now, because of a lot of different situations, we don't get out of school to 4:30. You
That's
see what I'm
late.
saying? And so
Yeah.
kids got to get home and eat dinner, and so it's dark when we're leaving, and so I limit practice to 2 hours now, rather than being able to run over without worrying about it being dark. And so that kind of cuts out some of what I would otherwise do. Not that we don't do it at all, we just don't do it as much.
Well, what advice would you give for an inexperienced coach, maybe in their first couple years, to help them improve their own team culture and allow them to find success at whatever sport they are coaching?
You have to establish expectation. The first way you establish it is you have to live what you expect. Okay. So for me, for example, I go to every off-season tournament that my team goes to. I'm there. So they can't say, well, you don't ever go. Yeah, I do. Okay. Now, I'm not married, so it's easier for me to say that. If you're married and you have kids and you're trying to be a head coach and win on a higher level, you've got some obstacles in your way that you're going to have to figure out a way to work through. But for the young coaches, hopefully not married yet, to establish your program, you need to find a system that's going to that you like. Me personally, you know, uh, we do all neutral and bottom position movement, and then returns to the mat for our everyday drilling. And we do it every day. Even our seniors, we're still doing it every day. And it really kind of works because my upperclassmen, I get them to drill initially, at least with the first year guys, to help escalate their knowledge, or their learning curve. And but find a system that's going to work for you, for your style of wrestling, for whatever you want it to be, and implement it and do it every day and stay with it. So for us, I do a 2-hour practice. The first 35 to 45 minutes is going to be the same thing every day. Come in, stretch out, get your warm up in, and then we do a double up or a step in drill, a double up and down the mat drill. Then we do our everyday drilling, which is double legs, single legs, high crotches, stand ups, the whole entire switch series, some returns to the mat, and some Granbys. Whatever we've done to whatever point, because you can't expect the first year guys that don't know everything to do everything, but the guys that do obviously do. So like that first week, you have a first year kid that's learning how to do a step in to a double leg shot. Well, that's all you're really going to drill until you can get him to the point where he's ready to take a double leg shot and start doing a double up and down the mat drill. It's a real baby step process, real slow baby step process to teach these guys. And when you have a junior or senior that's been there for 3 or 4 years, that can help you along the way. I mean, that really helps. But for the young guys, there's a lot of things that you're not seeing that you're going to have to endure. For example, parental apathy. I can't tell you how many parents don't care one lick about their kid wrestling. Wrestling's not like football or basketball where you just turn it on, it's on TV, and everybody wants to do it. Most kids don't know anything about wrestling. What they do know about it, it's WWE or whatever. It's entertainment. It's not real wrestling, which is realistically the toughest and most brutal high school sport there is, bar none. And that this is why wrestling numbers struggle, because it's so brutal and so tough, and kids are being more or less pushed into not being that way by culturally speaking. So you brought up culture earlier, but coaches, you're going to have to embrace the grind. Get in there, find that system you want to implement it, work it every day, and then get your guys in competition and compete. And you have to remember, high school JV football is a Thursday night sport. High school football varsity is a Friday night sport. Wrestling, by and large, is a Saturday sport. And a lot of parents don't understand that. You're going to have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, have your kid at the school by 6 o'clock in the morning. They're going to have to make weight. You're going to have to travel to wherever you're going. You're going to be there all day wrestling, all day sitting in them wooded bleachers that are, going to cause your back to go numb and all that, just to get your chance to wrestle, which might just be 2 times on that day, or it might be 3 or maybe 4, until your kid develops to where they are competing on a higher level. And then you realize all that's actually worth it. But initially, the coach is going to have to sell them on it. And it's not easy. So you got to find a way for your kids to have some success without, that participation trophy mindset. This is a brutal sport. The kids are going to take their licks because it's all about experience. They got to gain that experience. And, when a kid has some success, celebrate it. Let everybody see that, so that when their time comes, they get celebrated too, because victories are worth celebrating. And but when a kid shows up, listen, like for an off-season tournament, you show up to an off-season tournament, there's only 3 in the weight class. Your guy goes 0-2, kid's dejected. He's got his 3rd place medal, but to him it feels worthless. And I always tell those kids, it's better to wrestle and lose than not wrestle at all. Because believe it or not, you got better today, whether you believe it or not, you did. And just the fact that you showed up and came here, that says a lot for you, because 90% of the kids in this state that wrestle are sitting at home right now watching the Smurfs and eating Captain Crunch cereal.
I like that.
Oh, I love Captain Crunch.
So do I. Um, you mentioned a little bit ago that especially early on in the preseason camps, you have your first year wrestlers doing a lot of work with the juniors and seniors. What do you think is the benefit of that?
Um, it accelerates their learning. Now, I don't mean competing. I don't mean when
Yeah.
we're sparring or whatever you want to call it. Okay. I'm talking about when we're learning how to drill a double leg shot. I'll have the first year guy work with somebody who is established that knows what is going on. So, because I can't see everybody, my assistant can't see everybody, but we're watching as much as we can. But when you got 30 kids, it's hard to see everybody. Now, we're obviously focused on the first year guys to make sure they're getting, their penetration step right, their stance right, and all that leading up to the actual shot itself. Because double leg shots are, for example, here what I'm talking about. It's a baby step process. We teach it in stages of 3. The penetration step, stance, penetration step, and then of course the double leg shot. Proper shoulder placement. It's proper setup, proper distance. And all that kind of stuff. And after about 20 or 30 minutes, they typically get the gist of it. And then we can let them continue to work with the older guy while we're still filtering around the room and seeing what's going on. That's the benefit of that. I'd say another drill that we do that first year coach or, young coaches out there might want to take an consider is we always wrestle about 45 minutes every practice. Okay. Unless we're getting later into the season and I start minimizing our wrestling practice, our actual sparring in practice. We do what's called a slow roll. So we'll wrestle, and then there's a segue between wrestling and conditioning, because our conditioning is always the last 10 to 15 minutes of practice. It's probably the most brutal part of practice too, but that's beside the point. But I don't go directly from wrestling to conditioning. We do a segue called a slow roll, where we go about 50%. And in this drill, I always put, it's not really a drill. They're actually wrestling, but they're doing about 50%. And I'll put a new wrestler with a experienced wrestler. Then it's all top and bottom. And we put the experienced wrestler on top, and we tell them, you're slow rolling. And when this kid rolls to his back, stop him from rolling to his back. We put a half in, run the half. If he turns into the half, stop. Explain to him why you don't do that. Teach him how to peel the half, look away. Run a spiral, show him how to get out of a spiral. We don't allow stand-ups during slow roll. It's all got to be, we're sitting through, we're turning in, we're looking for switches. We're doing everything we can to learn how to move those hips to get out from underneath without the stand-up. And you'd be surprised at how much of a sweat that continues to get for 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes. I've been known to go up 8, 9 minutes on a slow roll, depending on where we are that time of the season, where our weight is, how much extra weight we might need to lose and whatnot. But them slow rolls, man, they're great, man, for helping kids learn how to wrestle. And those upperclassmen you have, especially the ones that are established, that know how to wrestle, they're great they can be an assistant coach without actually being an assistant coach. And so then we use that as a segue, like I said, to go into conditioning. And then our conditioning's, 10, 15 minutes every day.
I think there's another added benefit of having the older guys work with the younger guys. Yes, it allows the younger guys to, develop a little bit quicker, working with better athletes. But I think it's also huge for the older athletes because it's giving them a sense of ownership in the program. It's like, I'm not just an athlete here. I'm here to make sure that the people that I'm leaving behind are going to be good.
Yeah,
I'm setting them up for success.
you just taught me something. I've not even considered that. That's a great point.
I think it's beneficial for both of them.
I agree. I mean, from that perspective, I completely agree.
In my field, we talk a lot about like cross training between ages for that specific reason. Um, it really benefits everybody involved for a different reason. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
great that you're doing it.
my reasoning was totally selfish to minimize my workload and to make it easier for me. And the whole time, your mindset is probably more tuned into what I should be thinking. Um, but yeah, you're exactly right, because these the older guys, they start calling the younger guys their protege, and or their clone or whatever. So it's kind of neat how they do kind of take some ownership into it. I mean, and I've noticed that, but I just haven't noticed it the way you just articulated it. And yeah, I think that's 1,000% spot on.
Well, you can own on to the selfish reasons. It does make your life easier.
Yeah,
You could be happy with that too, but it benefits everybody.
it
You,
absolutely
the
does. Yeah.
first year wrestlers, the experienced wrestlers, everybody involved is benefiting from this. So it's whether you know why it's a good thing to do or not really doesn't matter. It is just a good thing to do. So
Yeah,
it's great you're
I
already
agree.
doing it.
And we do that. But yeah, the young coaches out there, they need to develop. First, they need to visualize what kind of program they want to have, and if they want to compete on a higher level, they're going to have to put the time in. They're going to have to sell the kids on the sport. They're going to have to sell the parents on the sport. They're going to have to figure out how to do that, because what works for me might not work for them. But uh, they're the ones that are going to have to work their schedule. And you know, it, in my opinion, I think wrestling is the easiest sport to take a team that is beleaguered and just not very competitive, to make them a competitive team almost immediately. I think it's the easiest sport to do that. I think it's the toughest sport to take from being a great team to a state championship caliber team, because that small difference between a team that's legitimately a state championship caliber team and a great team is March, April, May, and June. And getting as many of those kids in there as you can get and putting that time in, because you can get close and never have that cigar because you didn't do March, April, May, and June. And I tell my guys all the time, man, if we want to win a state championship, we're going to have to rip that state championship ring out of the heart of our competition. And if we don't, they're going to rip it out of ours. And that's every March, April, May, and June. We have that conversation during the season all the time. Hey guys, how many of you want to be great like Eli? How many of you guys want to be great like Patrick? And they'll all raise their hands. All right, well, we're going to find out in March, April, May, and June, because if you're not here, you're all talk. You're all talk. You're a wrestling season guy. But we have a good number that come back. As a matter of fact, it's 100%. To be honest with you,
That's a
because
pretty
they
good
buy in.
number.
Yeah, they buy in. Usually in wrestling, a first year kid, you get them through the holidays, they're going to probably finish the season. Not always, but that's typically the holiday, because wrestling, you got so many holidays you got to go through between Thanksgiving and then Christmas and then Martin Luther King. I mean, there's just so many holidays you got to go through. If you're able to get them through all the Christmas holidays, chances are they're going to finish the season, and then they do go through the off season. They're going to stick with you. Very seldom do kids quit after they've done an entire year of that, but it happens. But especially because they start winning on a higher level. And it's harder to walk away once you're really getting some success under your belt and building them wrestling medals up and plaques and trophies and all that. Because, let's face it, we all do what we're doing for some kind of recognition. And as long as it's a legitimate recognition based on accomplishment and not just because somebody gave you something just because. And I think that's what separates wrestling more than anything, is that these kids want accomplishment based on their hard work and the time that they put in it.
Yeah, you can't fake effort for wrestling.
That's exactly
You either
right.
put in the effort or you don't. And I
You
think
can't hide behind anybody.
any of
Can't
the
hide behind
combat
anybody.
sports, it's going to be clear.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I had for you. Do you have any parting thoughts you want to share before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, we pretty much covered it. Hoping that I was thorough in the answers that you wanted to hear from me. I think that being a high school wrestling coach is a very honorable um, position to undertake. It's going to require legitimate effort from anybody to do it. If you're going in it, just because, then you don't need to do it. The worst thing in the world for a wrestling team is a principal that just finds somebody and puts them in the position because they can't find anybody or don't want to go out and find anybody. Um, uh, but if you're going to be a wrestling coach and you're going to be serious about it, get ready to put that time in the off season, because that's what it's really going to take to get your kids on a higher level.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I did take a lot away from this conversation. I really enjoyed it. So thank you again.
Yeah. Okay.
And basically, I want to find the similarities that these coaches are doing. Because
Well, let me tell you what I believe.
go for it.
All these coaches that are the national coaches of the year, whatever sport they are, you could take any of those coaches and put them in any sport, and they're going to succeed
Yeah.
because they want to win. Okay. Hey, when I was at Parkland, the school I was at, we won the state championship 8 years in a row. I had never coached football. I applied for the head football coaching job, and I got an interview. And I went in the interview, and they asked me, "Why should we hire you?" I said, "Because I know the Parkland kids more than anybody. You're not going to find anybody that understands the culture at Parkland High School more than me and what it's going to take for this football team to be turned around." I said, "Look," and I told them, "You can hire Vince Lombardi. You can bring him out of the grave and hire Vince Lombardi. Whoever you hire is not going to win a football game at Parkland for 2 years. I'm telling you, there's been no impact players from the JV team that hadn't won a game in 4 years come up. And what's coming back next year, this football team is not going to win. I'm the perfect candidate for that job. I'll turn the culture around. You fire me after 2 years, your next coach is going to be able to win at that point." Well, they didn't hire me. I was a finalist. They didn't hire me. They hired a guy. The 1 year I coached, he brought me in to coach with him. They went 0-10. We went 0-10. The next year they went 0-10. The next year they went 3-8. The next year they went 8-3. You see what I'm saying? So everything that I told them was going to happen happened. Coaches that compete on a higher level consistently across the board, I don't care what the sport is, they understand the dynamic of high school athletics. They're going to win. It doesn't matter because they're winners. They know what it takes to win in the hard work. They're not afraid to put in the hard work it takes to get there. I could coach boys basketball, and I don't know a thing about it, but just because I know how to compete, we're going to have a good team. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's
And
what I believe. I believe that.
this conversation with you is my fifth of eight. Wait, no, it's my sixth. Sorry. I have
Mm-hmm.
two more after this. And what I have found, it's no matter what the sport is, no matter what background you're from, you and all these other coaches are doing the exact same thing. So this podcast is essentially a forum to show it doesn't matter what sport you're coaching, what background you are, you do these things, you will find success, and you will find success the right way.
Hey man, I'm telling you what, if I were you, I after you're done, you should do um a YouTube video of different clip segments of these coaches essentially saying the same thing and put it out there on YouTube. And after it'll get millions of hits after a while. You mark my words, because you're saying the same thing. If we're saying the
Yeah.
same thing, different sport, that should tell somebody something somewhere along the way.
If you're all saying the same thing, it's probably important. And
Right.
that's the purpose of my project. That's
Right.
actually a great idea that I hadn't thought of, but that would be a fun little side project. Ask
Right.
a question, because I've asked a lot of you the very similar, if not the same questions, and then just clip it because you guys are all saying the same things.
Right. Right. That's what I
Track
would do.
coach from Oregon, wrestling coach from North Carolina. We have golf coach from Washington. It's it's all the same.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So
It's just
yeah.
coaching.
Anyway. Well, look, man, I appreciate you the chat.
I
Take
really enjoyed it. Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.